Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 3, where we are going to be discussing some of the new material that I've added to this piece of music. We're going to lay down a bed of kind of chromatic cacophony. That's going to be this foundation that we're going to build a larger, more tonal brass melody on top of, with a lot of woodwind flourishes and some percussive elements that kind of keep the momentum going. As the children of Israel are really hating it in the desert. Let's get on with it. So before we get into the new material this week, I wanted to cover a couple little things I did. I kind of tweaked a few things in the existing material. When we transfer, when we go into this mode where we have the lower strings doing their kind of emotional thing, there seemed to be kind of too much of a dynamic change from the when it got to pianissimo here. When it got from this note to this note, it seemed like it was kind of a sudden thing, and it was kind of jarring. So I basically tied these notes all together, and before the low strings come in, and that really made everything much better. I'm just going to play that part here. Yeah, so it just comes in. So that's there. Also, before the choir comes in, and we do this crescendo and then back down to decrescendo before the piano comes in for the choir introduction. I messed around with some of the dynamics so it wouldn't be so jarring, and then I added a timpani roll leading into that kind of crescendo, along with a harp glissando, and I'll play that for you here. So it's not quite so, in your face. Then the piano comes in. I messed around with the dynamics on that too to make it so it was pianissimo, but the piano then became too loud. So I'll fix those adjustments when it comes time to in the digital audio workstation. So last week when we ended, there was nothing past the choir. Just needed to move on from there. And earlier this week, I recorded a quick video where I discussed my ideas for what was going to be coming next. And I did a little bit of kind of improvisation on the keyboard, and then I inputted it into the score here, and then I discussed a little bit. So we're going to watch that real quick, and then I'll move forward. So. Hey everybody, just wanted to give you a little bit of an insight of something. So whenever I need to get ideas for things, oftentimes I will improvise. And sometimes I'm really focused on the improvisation and trying to come up with ideas, or sometimes like if I'm not really mentally there, I will put something up on YouTube or watching a movie on my computer here, and I'll have like this Logic session open. This has a little bit of everything, different instruments set up already, like there's piano and there's strings and stuff like that. And I'll just noodle while I'm playing. Like, oftentimes I'll sit there and just kind of. Right now, I don't know. This is just me improvising. I'll do this kind of thing. I'll come up with little, and it's usually very disjointed. I'll just go into different keys. And different styles, but my point is that I will sit there and kind of passively improvise, and then when I come up with some ideas that I like, then I will stop and go, okay, let's focus on this. Well, just the other about a couple minutes ago, I was watching something, and I had it on strings, and I've been thinking about this next session where I'm taking the piece of music, now that we've established the choir is saying, hey, we're really miserable right now. Now I'm going to be establishing this build up from very small to very big, so that it gets really a lot of anguish and turmoil until they finally break, and then they complain to Moses, and then the Lord sends the snakes. But I wanted something to be kind of subtle at first, but still restless. And so I thought about the fact that in the the beginning the 4 notes of this melody, it's in E minor, but it's just an E minor up to the 3rd, down back to the root, right? And I thought, well, what would if I took those first 4 notes, we're in a new key, which is an A minor, and I put them down in the cellos and the basses, right? But I don't want to just basically quote that same melody. So I thought, well, let's make each of those notes the beginning note of each of these measures, and have them be a quarter note, the first beat. And then I have a set of 6 eighth notes in each of those measures after that. So like that, and that's not exactly what's going to be happening, but that's kind of that. And I will build about maybe 8 to 16 measures of that, and then that'll be an ostinato that continually plays while I build on top of it. Like I'll bring the violas in to do a contrary motion, doing the same type of thing. Like I'll have the violas do whatever motion these lower strings are doing, the violas will be doing an opposite. It'll be the contrary motion. And I was thinking of having the upper strings do something like that, or up high whistle tones, but maybe tremolo. Just an idea. Those are just the idea. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this now. I'm going to take this idea and then go into MuseScore, and I'm going to notate it out. And then that usually gives me more ideas as I do that, to say, well, okay, this is a nice pattern here. Let's move it up. So this is going to probably be another hour for me, but it'll only be a couple seconds for you. Okay, so it's been about an hour or so. So let's go back to the very beginning here. I'll show you that melody. You've got an E, F sharp, G, E, and that's the crux of what I'm using as thematic material. I'm getting those. That's the germ. But now we're in the key of A minor, so it'll be A, B, and C. So here's A, B, C, back down to A. But so here's I'm starting with quarter notes and then having descending eighth notes, and then there's not really any kind of rhyme or reason to any of these, but I'm making sure that I'm following the melody there. And then I have 4 more measures that aren't really related to that original melody, and then I come in with, I repeat that again. So this is an ostinato. It will repeat it again and again and again. And this time I bring in, for the second time it's played, I bring in the violas doing the contrary motion to what this is. If this is going down, this is going to be going up. And these are all doing tremolos. So when I did tremolos here, I ended up bringing in and repeating. When I bring in the second time when I'm playing this, I have the bassoon and contrabassoon playing the same notes as the double bass and cellos, and then I have the clarinet doubling the violas, but I'm having it do it in dun, 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 like that. So Anyway, I'm going to play this for you, but this gives you an idea. Plus, I add a little bit of accents with I have tam tam playing the very first there really softly, and then I have harp glissando coming up when I repeat that ostinato section and I bring in the woodwinds. Then I add a little bit more. There's a timpani swell in there. Anyway, we'll just listen to it. I'm talking too much. So this is the end of the choir section. So the alto, or they play that. So the first notes here are doubling these, but they're octave higher. And then I'm going to be bringing in them doing their own thing here. Dun, 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 dun. So I have the woodwinds doing that. Now, this doesn't sound very interesting right now, and it's not meant to. It's meant to be a bed that's underneath. When I had that swell and when I come in here, I'm going to be having the brass here is going to be coming up with something more thematic. I'll probably have the flutes and maybe the oboes do some swirls, really fast kind of scales and arpeggios to signify wind or maybe a breeze or something. But there's going to be some thematic material coming in that's going to be the crux of the musical content, whereas this is more atmospheric and kind of a bed for it to be on top of. So I haven't got that part yet, but I just wanted to let you in on a little bit of some of the ways that I come up with my ideas. And oftentimes that's how it starts. I improvise for a little bit, come up with an idea that I like, and then I try to develop that into something other than just a little idea. So I usually don't record videos for this until later in the week, but I happened across this, so I thought I would share this with you. This is my process after all, so we'll get onto more of it. I'll show you more of this as I develop this. So here's a string bed that I discussed in that video, and I did refine it a little bit when I do the contrary motion for the violas. I made them tremolo, and that gives a little bit more agitation, I should say. And second violins, I bring in some glissandos going down with these different notes, and then I add a bunch of trilled notes to, again, add more agitation, more kind of wind or whatever. And then I had basically kept this going on, but I decided to move into a new key, so I modulate here, and then go, I'm just going to play just the strings starting from here. And here comes the they don't sound as natural as they will. Now, in and of itself, this doesn't sound like much. Now we modulate. I'll get into that little section next. But so that's what I wrote with that video. And so the second violin, I added these things, and I basically had the flutes doubling this. And you can hear it more amongst the flutes than you can the strings. This is still just a bed of kind of chromatic cacophony happening that's undertoning what's coming above. So when this happens with these, I have added a harp glissando that's leading into it, as well as a timpani crescendo. And the timpani just does this, we're in A minor, so this is a 1 to a 5 to a 2 to a 5 to 1 to 5, 1 5 5 5. You know, and so just this kind of accents the tonal center, which is actually being brought to you by the brass. I have the brass playing unison, except for the trombone and the tuba. And I'll let you hear that. That's playing. Whoops, gotta add that one. So, that's when we modulate to the new key, which is again E minor. I might throw in a couple of rests here to allow the brass to breathe a little bit, but I like this continuums. But this is basically, this section right here, just the brass, is establishing kind of a tonal center that we have. You're still feeling uneasy. There's still lots of stuff happening and cacophony going on, but there's a centralized kind of theme here that gives it some more musicality. Here, the woodwinds do the same thing, doubling the strings. And the clarinets double the violas with the contrary motion happening there. The bass clarinet actually plays the melody along with the brass, and the oboe and the flute do the same thing with the trills and stuff that the second violins are doing. And before that gets introduced, though, I do have this little dialogue between the flute and the clarinet. I'm going to play this real quick. This, to me, this doesn't sound. The very I don't know, the dynamic differences here are striking. It's not as good as the playback. So, or it's not good during the playback. So the trill is at mezzo piano, which is nice, but when it does this little run going up to this other trill, it's like twice as loud. The clarinet does a little better job of that, keeping the dynamic, but it's still very distinct. So I'm going to play that. But this is being played above that lower string kind of thing going on. Okay. That is nice. I like it. I'm going to play the woodwinds basically from there. And then you can hear what's going on there. And then I'll be playing everything together until we get to the modulated section. So. Okay, so that's it doesn't sound like much. In fact, if I just listen to that woodwind section, I'm like, ugh, I don't like the way that does. But again, this is meant to help you feel uneasy. This is meant to not give you kind of any kind of um, uh, you know, resolution. It's just there to kind of make you feel uneasy. And so if we put all of it together though, the brass kind of brings it into kind of a tonal center, but you still have all this other stuff happening in the underneath. And in the final mix, whenever I get this put together, um, you'll still be able to hear the cacophony more, it'll be more balanced. And then you'll hear the melody come through. So let's go ahead and let's get out of this real quick. And I'm going to start from the beginning of the, I'll bring in the last little bit here. So I have these little gong or tam-tam hits that help give a little bit of atmosphere. But I mean, it's already getting some from the strings. But here comes that dialogue. Up. Okay, so now we're modulated into the new key, and I'll take these a little bit sections at a time too. So with the strings, I am going to zoom in there. I have continued the first violin's doing a lot of tremolos, which it kind of just gives I like it. The second violins are doing these trills, these kind of runs, and they will be a little bit more. I want to try to. I'm going to see if I can do a glissando from this note to this note, and then from that note up to there. But right now, it's okay just having just the initial trills on those. I like them, but I've introduced a technique in here called Col Legno, which is Italian for with the bow, with the wood. Sorry, with the wood. So what happens is when a string player is playing Col Legno, they take their bows and they flip them upside down, and then rather than trying to bow with the wood, they hit the string with the wood. And so it's a very percussive sound, but you can still tell there is tone there. So I'll just play just the Col Legno parts. You almost hear the cello over the but but there's also this note up here the violas are doing. So but it's still the double basses are still doing their chromatic little ostinato, and that's also being doubled with the contrabassoon. So, and I think the tube is also doing it. So, but anyway, I'm just going to play all the strings there from that point, and then you can hear it from. I'll just go from here. So there's still that thing happening there. This is very repetitive. This part is because there's a lot happening above that we don't see yet. But this is, again, this is kind of a bed giving us uncertainty and not resolution and agitating us. And that's where I stopped. So, all right. So that's the first part of the the modulation into the new key. For the percussion, I just do this where I bring in the harp doing a glissando, and then I have the harp also contribute to the Col Legno parts. Very, very soft. Just it's underscoring it there. And so, and then let's see here. Let's talk about, oh, and yeah, I'm sorry. And so I do have the, I'll put in the harp and the percussion here. So, and here we go with so the timpani and the harp are complementing what the violas and the cellos are doing with their Col Legno techniques. So, all right, so there's that. I'm going to talk about the woodwinds now, or the brass, I should say. So the brass are not, brass are going to, instead of playing the main melody like they've been, now they're taking a back burner and playing, helping support the harmonic structure without overpowering things. So I'm just gonna, I'll start here. So here's the, whoops, I keep on forgetting that this horn is, somehow these got separated. I think it's because of notes like that that I keep on forgetting that. So let's do that. So now we're in the key of E minor. So I have the horns and the trumpets muted. The tuba is still playing the ostinato part along with the basses and the contrabassoons. Again, repetitive, but it's establishing this kind of key that we're in now. Okay. Woodwinds, let's go up there. So woodwinds is mostly going to be just the bass clarinet and the bassoons and the contrabassoons. So here I was, instead of just doubling what the contrabassoon was doing, which is that ostinato that we created at the beginning, I'm still doing the ostinato, but I am doubling the rhythmic structure. So for every eighth note, I am playing I'm playing 2/16 notes with the bassoon. So like here's just the contrabassoon. Okay, but then I added the bassoon. Now the bassoon is playing each of these notes as well, but if you notice, I'm playing the upper note in between. So if whatever, you know, I try to at least do the upper note, but here we go. So there's all this happening here. It just, again, we're just making you feel uneasy. And I have the bass clarinet doubling the bassoon. So here we go. You don't hear it as much in the mix, and I probably will bring it up a little bit. Again, we're establishing uneasiness here. This part is the repetitive part as far as leading into what's happening next, which I have got some ideas what I'm going to do, but not yet. Haven't really fleshed them out yet. Okay, so I have this little dialogue underneath, on top of that between the flute and the English horn. I'm just going to play that. Okay, nice little melodic thing going on top of all this cacophony. So I try to infuse at least some melody even when we're going through this upheaval here, I like to have some sort of melody that is in the key that we're in and has some sort of beginning, middle, and resolution, right? I don't like things that are unresolved for too long. And so I still want to give the flavor of that we're in the Middle East here. So I'm using some of those kind of scales. So I'm just going to play all of the woodwinds together. And then we'll put everything together so you can hear everything together and hear it all. Okay, so cool. Let's bring this out to so you can see everything. Anyway, okay, so let's go back to the very end of where the choir is singing their thing. I'll zoom in here. So I have strings coming up, the high strings, and I can do this. That's almost too soft at the beginning there. Okay, now we come in with the big brass. Modulation. I will say that real string players hate it when you do Col Legno because sometimes those bows are super expensive and that can mess up the finish. But it's a great effect. And that's where we end for now. So I want to, okay, right now we're at 6 minutes basically. And I don't want this to be more than say 13 minutes long. So I've got 7 minutes left. We still have to deal with them complaining to Moses, God sending the serpents and biting them repenting. Moses then prays to God. God tells them to make the brazen serpent, and then they get saved. And then there's a resolution there. So I've got 6 things I gotta address in this story in the next 7 minutes. So I think I've taken maybe a little bit too long to get to this point, but I don't care. I can make it longer. I can make it shorter. It's up to me, right? It all depends on where the inspiration is at the time. I just don't want to make it too long. Anyway, that's it for this week. I will catch up with you next week. I might include you into the actual compositional process as the weeks go by. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.